So lovely. Good evening, Zambia. Good evening, Africa, and warm welcome to this special edition of the bigger program right here on KBN TV from Zambia's capital city, Lusaka. With me, Innocent Perican. Simply call me IP. Of course, we are found on DSTV channel 279, GoTV channel 27, and Topside Decoder channel 102. A man who ruled Zambia for 7 years from 2015 to 2021, Edgar Chagwa Lungu was born in 1956 and died on June 5th, 2025. Mr. Lungu traveled to the Republic of South Africa for specialized medical treatment under what had been described as a sneak move for fear of being blocked by the Zambian government. He was a strong critic of President Hakainde of the United Party for National Development, UPND. His body has today clocked exactly 1 month from the time he died without burial, as the two factions or the two grouping, be it the Lungu family and also the Zambian government, have failed to reach consensus. Mr. Lungu, of course, he bounced back into active politics about 3 years ago under a hashtag from some of his members as well as sympathizers, Alewedelapo. And of course, one of the people that began the crusade of the Alewedelapo song is a UK-based social, political, and economic analyst in the name of Beverly Chandamo, rather Beverly Kundamo, based in the United Kingdom. She joins me via the link to discuss the 1 month of the unburied body of the former head of state, Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu. She's known by the name of Queen Cobra, or the Chair of Zambia. Queen Cobra, welcome, and good evening to you, and welcome to Zambia via the link that has been shared with you.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. Good evening, Zambia. It's good to be back on KBN TV. It's been a while, even though we've come back in these circumstances. But good evening, Zambia. Thank you for having me.
Much. Of course, I do believe that yourself and many other Zambians out here, myself equal in the studio from the media, we have been, hit by this death of our former head of state, Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu, because I was a man who saved all of us, and the country remains on a somber mood. How is UK? And of course, let's begin from here. We are discussing the demise of ECL. Of course, 1 month from the time he died or he passed on, today, the 5th of July, ECL's body remains unburied. How is UK? And of course, how did you receive this death of a man whom you loved the most?
Oh, it's been tough. It's something that I personally have not come to terms with. It's something that I'm trying to process. It came as a shock when I got the news. I was devastated. I couldn't believe what just happened. So the 1 month still feels like it's a dream that we hope to, wake up and somebody will tell me it's just a bad dream that you're having, especially for a person like me who proclaimed the love for ECL publicly without shame, despite all the critics for Edgar Chagwa Lungu and the person that stood by him in terms of Alebwele Lapo. So I've been hit really hard. But there's something that President Lungu always told me, to be strong, and it's something that I keep on holding on. And he always used to say, never lose hope. So it's something that that's keeping us going at the moment. Yeah, so 1 month of Edgar Lungu not being here with us is something that has really hit us really, really hard. So it's been tough. It's been tough.
I hope you got my question. Who was Edgar Chagwa Lungu to you? Who was ECL?
Oh, that's when I've gotten the question. Oh, so Edgar Chagwa Lungu. Okay, to me, I don't know if you want me to talk Galungu personally to me, or if you want me to talk about him in a lens of him being of this country, country for almost 7 years.
As a national leader at the time? From
Sorry,
all
come
the
again?
sides? At personal level?
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, all right, okay. So I'll start with him being a leader of our country. Um, at the time, I didn't know Edgar the way I came to know him after this. So I'll speak on the leadership kind of aspect where Edgar Lungu, just Archbishop of Lusaka, mentioned servant till the end. He was a servant of his people, country, and he served this country gently. He was in politics, and in politics, was President Hakainde Hichilema, who was president. He never recognized him as the Republican president. And I think the feud between President Edgar Lungu and President Hakainde Hichilema started back in 2017, rather, where President Hakainde Hichilema's motorcade decided to block President Lungu at the time, motorcade. I think that's where the feud really, really started. So that being said, President Lungu was a leader with a big heart, a leader that really cared about his country and the people that he served. He was a leader that loved dearly. It doesn't matter who his critics was, his biggest critics. He had that big heart that, you know, all he wanted is to accommodate everybody, including those that criticized him. I think he did so much for this country that people like me at the time could not see what he did for our country, that we need to dwell on the negative side that was being propagated at the time he was in office. At the time he left office, we then, you know, started seeing what kind of a leader he was. And I think he did so many great things for this country. He did so many, he brought development for this country. Talk of the Lusaka, the KK International Airport, the Gazungula Bridge. Also, I think he's one of the presidents that brought infrastructure development to this country. And he will be remembered as one president that really changed the face of our country. To me personally, President Lungu was a friend, because at the time President Lungu was in office, I was his critic, and I knew him from the aspect of being a leader and what was being said about his presidency and things like that. When he left office, and then I started my political analysis journey, and I assessed where Zambia was when he left office and where Zambia is now. I decided to start analyzing and, you know, championing the Alewere Rapo agenda, so that President Edgar Lungu can come back into active politics as well as run for presidency, so that he can come back and be president again. But from that aside, to me personally, I came to know Edgar Chagwa Lungu as Edgar Chagwa Lungu, and not, you know, President of the Republic of Zambia. So I was privileged enough to have that kind of interaction with President Edgar Lungu. And I can tell you that whoever's crossed the path of Edgar Chagwa Lungu will always, always, always hold him dear to him. The man was just easygoing, jovial, always laughing, cracking jokes. you know, is a kind of man that really never took life too serious. You know, some people with their status in the society, they would, I was president, I cannot associate with this one. Or I was president, I cannot. He accommodated every single person that came his path. So for me, I came to appreciate who Edgar Lungu was as a friend. For me, I think he was a friend, and he's somebody I'm gonna hold dear to my heart, and somebody I will always, you know, remember, and I'll always, you know, put there, like all the mud that is being thrown at him. Trust me, it's a promise that I've made to him and to myself that I will always stand by him. Even in his death, I'm going to stand by Edgar Chagwa Lungu, and I will make sure that whatever mud is being thrown at him, I will clean it. And that is a promise that I've made to myself and to President Edgar Chagwa Lungu.
So basically, what you are telling me this evening, Queen Cobra, is that when Edgar Chagwa Lungu was the president of this country, he was not a good leader. You came to realize
No,
his
no, no,
leadership, stature, or how good he was in leadership after he lost power in 2021. I ask this question because, like you've mentioned, you were one of the critics of President Edgar Chagwa Lungu. You yourself, in
yes,
particular, you ran the crusade against the presidency of Edgar Chagwa Lungu, and later
yes.
on, you turn around and begin to worship or rather support a man whom you decampaigned when he was a president. Don't you think that is also some forms of hypocrisy from your end? Or double,
Right. Thank you
maybe?
so much. I would just say worship is a very strong word, so I wouldn't say worship because it's just a man. So I would say not really worship him, but appreciate and support what he did for our country. You see, when President Lungu was in power, okay, something that really lacked, and something that I saw that lacked in our country, was people giving the other side of political analysis, whereby those oppositions that were opposition leaders that were in opposition at the time where when President Lungu was in power, used, let me just say, for lack of a better term, used lies to get into power. You understand? And most of the young people, including people like me, fell for the lies. You say there was a song that was being sung during the PF administration, and the song was about corruption. The song was about poor leadership. The song was about lack of vision. And those that were in opposition at the time kept on singing this song and saying, if you vote us in power, all this that you are seeing, the suffering that is going on, the exchange rates, you know, we are going, as soon as you vote us into power, the kwacha will appreciate against the dollar, and so on and so forth. There was so much promises that were being made. And unfortunately for us Zambians, we fell for those lies. We fell for the propaganda. We stopped looking at the developmental projects that President Lungu brought to our country and where our country was headed at the time. So we bought into a lie, a promise of a lie, that when we move Edgar Chagwa Lungu, we're going to usher in Hakainde and all our lives will get better. One of the most thing that was sold to the Zambians was about cadarism. And today I look at the outlook of Zambia. Okay, and you look, cadres are everywhere. People are dying like flies. So it's something that made me realize to say, I was wrong. I need to look at things objectively. And for me, that's when I decided to say, look, with everything that is going on, with the way our economy is being handled by the now government, the UPND administration, I think we need President Edgar Lungu to come back. We need President Edgar Lungu to come and finish where he's left from, because we could touch the developmental projects. We could touch it. We could feel it. Even now, as I speak, the international airport that we are used fly out, it was done in Edgar Lungu's administration. So for me, It's not about hypocrisy. It's about being sincere and honest with what I stand on. I stand on the principle of that Zambia has to develop. And if it has to develop, it has to trickle down to even the poorest individual in our society. And for me, between Edgar Lungu and President Hakainde Hichilema, I feel like President Lungu had the heart for the poorest person in our country. And that is why I started talking about a Alewelelapo agenda and trying to see if Edgar Chagwa Lungu can come and continue from where he left from.
In your many interactions you had or you encountered with the former head of state who is being mourned today, did you offer an apology to him before you could begin your crusade, the Alewelelapo crusade? Did you say sorry for having been one of the people who scandalized him, according to what you are saying, or who were blackmailed, according to you, by the former, by the current administration and the current President Hakainde Hichilema, who allegedly blackmailed you with what you are calling as lies? Did you apologize to ECL, say, here I am now as a lost child who was blackmailed, and I say sorry to you, but on the meanwhile, Alewelelapo, did you do that?
Happened in our country 3 months or just the time UPND came into government. So when it wasn't common to criticize the then new government that has come in with the hope for the people of Zambia. So at the time when I saw that, I think I wrote an article towards President Edgar Lungu, and that article was a form of apology to him. But even going forward, I did apologize because of the manner in which we decampaigned him. So I did apologize to the then President Edgar Chagwa Lungu, and I said, sorry, sir, we misjudged you, we misjudged your leadership. And I think I did say sorry, yes.
There's some kind of fights with your baby there. That of course, I hope you will not get disrupted. This being a live program being watched by many Zambians out there. Yeah, but my question is, let's come to the current status quo where we are as a country. We have lost this man who was eulogized, or who is being eulogized by many Zambians and a number of people across the globe. We are at a point where we are failing to bury his body up to now. What do you think has gone wrong, in your view, having followed all these events that have characterized? Or, yeah, I will repeat my question, Queen Cobra. I hope you're gonna get me clear. My question is, let's come to the current happenings in our country. A man who is being eulogized in his death, that he did he did a lot for this country, is normal. And at the same time, again, we are failing to bury his body because of the back and forth coming from the family members of the late ECL and the government as well. Where do you think we have gone wrong as a nation to be on a standstill at this level?
When Lungu died, I didn't really expect that we could actually reach a point where a month without him, and we've not really given him a dignified send off. And with him not being buried, it's really such a shame, and it's heartbreaking that this is where the country is and this is what is happening to our country. But first, we need to understand that this whole thing was so unnecessary with the demise of President Edgar Chagwa Lungu that, you know, there was only one thing that needed to happen, and that one thing was that um, President Hakainde Hichilema should not be anywhere near the funeral of President Edgar Chagwa Lungu. And if President Hakainde Hichilema could have just respected, sorry about that, if only President Hakainde Hichilema could have just respected the wishes of the family and the wishes of President Edgar Lungu, wouldn't be here today. And it's just unfortunate with what is happening in our country. And I hope that at some point, you know, this whole thing will be sorted amicably.
Question at hand is that President Edgar Chagwa Lungu was not just a family member, or he was not just a father or a grandfather, but he was a head of state of this country who served this nation for 7 solid years, and therefore we cannot simplify his burial in any way. So there is the side of the government, because ECL, he was a government asset, rightly so by the government, and he did rightly so by the people of Zambia. While on the other side as well, there are some conditions which have been set by the family members of the late ECL, who are saying our man left his some wishes, and one of the wishes is that the current head of state should never be any near to his burial. When you look at these arguments, really, what do you think, or what do you think should be done? Let's speak from a perspective of being Zambians and Africans, where sometimes we believe that when there's a funeral, we set our differences aside and bury someone. From there, we can begin our fights where we can. What is your take there?
We need to be sincere. We need to be honest with ourselves in our country. First of all, one thing we need to realize is that President Hakainde Hichilema and President Edgar Lungu did not enjoy a good relationship. You know, they were not friends, and I think they will never be friends. So that's one thing we need to first understand and accept as a nation. Even with President Edgar Lungu losing power, handing over power to President Hakainde Hichilema peacefully, went into retirement, the UPN administration never missed an opportunity to mock this man when he was alive, to humiliate him when he was alive, and to ensure that they peel him like he used to say himself when he was alive, to peel him like an onion, go after his family and children to get to him. When he actually said, if you want me, I'm here, come get to me. So there were mind games being played. We saw the widow now, Mama Esther Lungu, being arrested for vigorous charges just to try and torment this man, just to try and get to this man. His children, as we speak, they're appearing before court. They mentioned to say these things that we have, this man gave it to us. Instead of the DEC, Drug Enforcement Commission, and everybody else to go after the very man that provided these fortunes for the children and the wife, they decided, like President Edgar Lungu put it, that they peel him like an onion by going after his wife and children. So we need to put that on record, and we need to embrace the truth, even if it is the ugliest truth, because that is the truth. So President Hakainde Hichilema and President Edgar Lungu did not enjoy a good relationship. It is the more reason why they stopped him from accessing his medical care. They stopped him from flying to Korea to go and give like a speech. It is a more reason that everything that Edgar Chagwa Lungu tried to do after leaving office, and includes jogging, and that includes going to church, everything was seen in a political lens. But at the same time, We need to understand that the coming back of Edgar Lungu into active politics was necessitated by the UPND administration. If you ask me, IPU, how did they do it? They went for the very party that made him president of the Republic of Zambia and tried to destroy it. And it's something that he promised, let Michael Chilufya-Sata, to ensure that his party does not die. On the 28th of October 2023, President Lungu announced his return into active politics, and he said specifically, I will not allow people to destroy the Patriotic Front. Right now, we have a government that is saying we have to send this man off in a dignified way. We have a government that's saying, oh, now that he's dead, we are going to return his benefit that he was stripped from. To what benefit is he? This man is dead. Even if you give him those benefits, he will not enjoy those benefits. Yes, you're going to say the excuses of saying, no, you came back into active policy. But even now, President Edgar Chagwa Lungu went to South Africa as a private citizen. And the family said, according to President Edgar Lungu, he said he will return me back to Zambia as a private citizen if at all a state funeral is going to be granted to me. So on the 20th of October 2023, when President Lungu returned back into active politics, he said specifically that he will not let the Patriotic Front to die. Right now, as the government is saying they want President Lungu to be buried in a dignified manner. The person that is appearing on the Patriotic Front is Robert Chavinga, a stooge of the UPND. On his party, right now, if you go to the Registrar of Society, Chavinga is the one holding on the papers to the very party that this government is saying President Edgar Lungu was a Patriotic Front president. How does that work?
Video you've just referred to at a time when you, among others, moved this crusade, this a song, the Alewederapo song, and eventually ECL did listen to many of you. But again, remember that you are being blamed. Even that time when ECL bounced back into active politics, some of your critics did advise you that ECL is not fit to be back into politics. ECL is going to lose his benefits as it were, according to the constitution. But again, you insisted that the man, he needed to wear it up, and indeed after he came back to active politics, he lost his benefits. Let's watch this video. We'll be back shortly as you also check your camera.
Want to die, I will also not allow factions within the party. I will also not allow opportunistic individuals to destroy the party. Hear this. Therefore, after a careful and deep reflection and wide consultation, including prayer, following naked efforts by those in power to annihilate the biggest opposition party PF is under today, the PF, using their stooges and institutions of governance, I have decided to return to active politics. Hear this. Therefore, after a careful and deep reflection and wide consultation, including prayer, following naked efforts by those in power to annihilate the biggest opposition party PF is under today, the PF, using their stooges and institutions of governance, I have decided to return to active politics. But not want to die, I will also not allow factions within the party. I will also not allow opportunistic individuals to destroy the party.
All right, we are, of course, still remembering the life of former President Edgar Chagwa Lungu, who died on the 5th of June 2025. And today, his body has clocked 1 month from the time, of course, he died. And of course, I have joining me via online from UK, the name of Beverly Kunda Mo, of course, who is a political, social, and economic analyst, discussing the legacy of Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu, and of course the events that have characterized. As we speak today, I should make mention that so far the government has further moved in, trying to persuade the government of South Africa in having the body of ECL to be repatriated back into the country. But of course, let us listen to some other sentiments coming from the Lungu family, which is being represented by Honorable Makebi Zulu, of course, who is equally in South Africa right now. I think you remember last week there was again some other drama which happened, in which the Attorney General, Mr. Mulilo Kabesha, moved in again to interdict the burial which was supposed to take place. This was at a time when everybody, a number of mourners, had traveled from Zambia and some other parts of the continent to go and pay their last respect. But the burial was interdicted by the state. And of course, that, according to him, it gave room, it was an opportunity for the two parties to agree. But it appears the two parties have failed to come to an agreement, listening from both ends of the government and also the family to Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu, being represented by a prominent lawyer in the name of Makebi Zulu. But the question is, what should be done? How can this matter be handled? And of course, Makebi Zulu did mention that there has been a number of there were a number of leaders who were mediating the background of ensuring that the government and the state, they come to an agreement, but that literally failed. And he did mention, and the name of Bakili Mluzi, for example, that he was at a critical center of wanting to bring the two parties together. So I'm being joined by Beverly Kundamo, who is popularly known as Queen Cobra, or the chair of Zambia. And of course, I will play one of the videos of Honorable Makebi Zulu, or the family to Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu, the late. All right, let's see if we can proceed with Madam Mo, just to hear from her side. I hope she's back on camera. Now, of course, the other sentiments that have come in is that the lamentations coming from the Lungu family, in which they have complained, they have cried foul that, wow, they are sensing some forms of hypocrisy from the government side. They've accused the Zambian government that, while on the other hand, the government is advocating for a reconciliation or dialogue with the Lungu family, while on the other side of the coin, they have mounted what they're calling as a propaganda machinery from the media side, as well as social media, to scandalize the family of the late former president Edgar Chagwa Lungu by issuing all sorts of statements in that regard. These are some of the allegations that have been leveled by to the government of Zambia. But of course, the government as well says, according to President Hakainde, I did mention that we remain determined. We remain open. Our doors remain open for further consultation and dialogue and possible reconciliation with the ECL family, because Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu, despite that he was our number one or among those who are critical to my administration, we have to come together and say, let's give him a befitting and a dignified send-off during his burial. That's what the government is saying, quite open for dialogue and agreements going forward. But all these efforts, I should make mention, have not yielded any results up to where we are today. It is exactly 1 month from the death of Edgar Chagwa Lungu, and the body has not been buried as we speak today. Beverly Kundamo, she is a Zambian who is based in the United Kingdom, UK, political, social, and economic analyst, of course, as she joins me via the link discussing the legacy of the man she loved the most. Let's watch this video.
Fellow Zambians, it is with profound sorrow that we announce the passing of His Excellency, Dr. Edgar Chagwa, 6th President of the Republic of Zambia, who departed this morning at 06 hours at Mediforum Clinic, a center in South Africa. My father, President Lungu, had been under medical supervision in recent weeks. His condition was managed with dignity and privacy, with support from all well-wishers. In this moment of grief, we invoke the spirit of one Zambia, one nation. The timeless creed that guided President Lungu's service to our country. In time, the nation will be involved to be informed of other arrangements. Thank you. God bless you.
For Chagwa constituents here in Lusaka, Zambia. Now, I should make mention for those who are watching us across the borders of Zambia that Edgar Chagwa Lungu was also a member of parliament for Chagwa constituents, which in whose daughter Tasila Lungu inherited when at the time when he became president of this country. That's Honorable Tasila Lungu there, who had officially given the statement about the demise of her father. Beverly, I hope you are back again. Queen Cobra, I was asking a question that why can't we as a country come together? Of course, you did mention that President Hakainde Hichilema and former and the late President Edgar Chagwa Lungu, they were not friends, going by your words, and they will never be friends. Are you being patriotic if you are going to speak in such a manner? Why can't we bury the differences and perhaps give him a state funeral or a dignified funeral as a former head of state? All right, we seem to have some connectivity issues there. All right, we'll hear again the... All right, she's back. I hear she's back now. Queen Cobra, I hope you are back again. Can you hear me?
Why we shouldn't, bury our differences and move on. IP, it's you see, people need to understand that it's not as easy as you put it, IP. President Edgar Lungu is dead, and the circumstances of which led to his death is something that we cannot just overlook and say, oh, it's okay, he's gone, he's dead, let's bury our differences and move on. Because if we don't address the reality and the truth, this might happen to another president and another president, and we'll make it like it's a norm. We need to put a stop to this. And how do we put a stop to this? We need to face the truth. And it is the truth that President Hakainde Hichilema don't want to face. It is a truth that the UPN administration want to put and drag under the rug. It is a truth that is staring before each one of us. And it is a difficult truth that we all must embrace. That is the only way we can go forward and bury our differences. As long as we don't want to face this truth, and as long as we want to pretend like we didn't see what was happening to President Edgar Lungu, this is a man that the UPND administration did everything in their power to humiliate, to insult, using their cadres in front of police, a full view of the police, and none of those cadres were arrested. Videos are there. I'm not speaking from without, I'm speaking from within. And as long as those videos exist, and as long as those cadres, the UPND cadres that constantly insulted and humiliated President Edgar Chagwa Lungu have not been dealt with, we cannot say, let's bury our differences and we move on. It does not work like that. Life does not work like that. President Hakainde Hichilema, even him just saying sorry has been difficult. He can't say sorry. And even the death of President Edgar Lungu, President Hichilema wants to put it like it is all about himself. Nobody else. It is about Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, and everything has to point
Hold
to
on.
Mr.
Why
Hakainde
do you want
Hichilema.
him to say sorry? Sorry for what?
For how he treated his predecessor. They keep on saying no, but President Lungu mistreated President Hakainde Hichilema in opposition. The question is, at what point did President Lungu ever try to block President Hakainde Hichilema's motorcade? The question is, at what point did President Lungu not recognize President Hakainde Hichilema as President of the Republic of Zambia? At what point did President Hakainde Hichilema, President Lungu, ever diminish the office that President Hakainde Hichilema holds? Mr. Hakainde Hichilema is on record of not recognizing President Edgar Chagwa Lungu as the Republican president. He said, and I quote, "There is no legislation that makes me recognize such and such a person as the Republican president." And the thing is, in this country, we want to tell the truth as long as that truth makes us to look in good light. When President Lungu lost power, he bowed before Hakainde Hichilema. And he recognized President Hakainde Hichilema as the Republican president of this country. And at no point did he ever try to overtake his motorcade. And maybe that's why President Lungu was not arrested. So we need to understand what led to the arrest of President Hakainde Hichilema at the time he was an opposition leader. And we ask, I always pose this question to the UPN until today, they've not answered me this question. If Dr. Fred Mimbi, if President Adikara, and any other opposition leader, Sean Tembo, and anybody else, try to do what President Hakainde Hichilema did when in opposition today, what could be the fate of that opposition leader? So, President Hakainde Hichilema must say sorry to President Lungu. One, for doing what he did in 2017, which led to his arrest. Because he now understands what office signifies, the office of the Republican president, because he now sits in there. And I believe he wouldn't want any opposition leader to do what he did to President Edgar Chagwa Lungu in office. But above all, President Hakainde Hichilema must apologize to President Lungu for trying to peel him like an onion, going after his wife, going after his children, and stopping him from accessing his medical care. Because yes, he came back into active politics. Yes, you stripped off his benefit, but you shouldn't have taken his right to access medical care. It's something that was his right. And if he had that right, he was bound to go travel and access his medical care. And I think it's just a humanly thing to do. To heal, somebody has to apologize. Who's going to be a bigger person? The man that is dead or the man that is alive?
I asked you a question earlier on that ECL, his health had not been okay. Even at the time when he was a president, I think you followed his health was not as fit as he should have been. I think in some of the occasions which I covered myself, there was a time at which he almost collapsed whilst addressing a public event. in that regards, meaning that the man, his healthy was not okay, but you insisted, you as Queen Cobra in particular, among other people, to have ECL come back into active politics. Are you not the ones to be blamed that you might have maybe, you are the ones who cost his life?
IP, that question really is quite that question is a I don't know how to say it or how to address that, but I'm gonna say this. You can't say ECL wasn't fit, and we are the ones that maybe led, like we forced him. First of all, you need to understand. First of all, you need to understand that President Edgar Lungu is not a child, or was not a child. He was a man with a family and understood, whether he himself was the one who understood.
All right. We seem to have a bit of some disruption from our guest, from the end of our guest there. Of course, I did ask a question, and I'm hoping that she can come back and just exhaust this point. Very important as we remember or continue remembering the life of Edgar Chagwa Lungu. I beg your pardon for that. I'm being joined by Queen Cobra Beverly Kundamo, of course, joining us from UK in that regards, in her capacity as a political and social, as well as economic analyst in that regards. She is one of the people that indeed supported former president who is being remembered, Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu. Of course, we have his body still not having been buried. It's exactly 1 month now, today being July 5th, 2025. The body has stayed with us for the last 1 month, and of course the government has moved in trying to halt the entire process, and now they have sued the government. According to the information we have, they have sued the South African government to ensure that the body is perhaps surrendered into the hands of the Zambian government. But of course, the family side as well, they seem to be quite determined in ensuring that the right thing, according to them, and the wishes of the former head of state protected as well as addressed. So we'll see how this matter is going to unfold going forward as well. We see maybe a dialogue from this moment as we get into the next 2 days from now, 3 days from now. Are we going to see the two parties coming to the party and saying enough is enough? Let us respect the man who was cared, or rather who was loved by many Zambians out there. That's in the name of Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu. Now, Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu, he was a lawyer by profession who, of course, enacted the Zambian Constitution in 2016, which is now being referred as the 2016 Constitution Amendment Act. Of course, she's brought a number of changes in that regards. Let's see Queen Cobra. She's back again online. Queen Cobra, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I'm so sorry about the interruption. Apologies for that.
Right.
Yeah, so I was talking about President Edgar Lungu. You need to understand that President Edgar Lungu, he himself was the best person to judge whether he was fit or whether he was not fit. It wasn't up to you, IP. It wasn't up to me to decide whether he's fit or not. So I believe that he cannot come here and defend himself, but I believe with the way I came to know Edgar Chagwa Lungu. You see, people had this misconception about President Edgar Chagwa Lungu. You know, President Edgar Chagwa Lungu, I think everyone that has come across his path, they will say he's a type of man that he listens to all the views and, you know, to everybody. But when he makes a decision and when he says no, it is no. He never backtracks. It's not a situation where, unfortunately for President Hakainde, where he says one thing and does the other. No. With President Edgar Lungu, when he says no, it is no. I'll give you an example why I'm saying this, because me personally, I interacted with him. During the 10th memorial of President Sata, okay? We saw the commotion that was there, and President Hakainde Hichilema insisted that he should preside over the 10th memorial of President Michael Chilufya Sata. Now, when President Hakainde Hichilema insisted that he should preside over the 10th memorial of President Michael Chilufya Sata, on the other hand, he was trying to destroy the very party that Michael Chilufya Sata had built. Okay? And you saw police being deployed to a point where the child Jesus, the Catholic Church, was surrounded by police officers. We all remember that, it is on record. Okay? Now, here's the thing. President Lungu decided he's not going to attend the memorial because he doesn't want confusion, because he respects this man. And prior to that date, on the 9th, he appeared on Ambassador Emmanuel Mwamba's podcast, and he narrated the story of Michael Chilufya Sata, his political journey, and how he came to be president. Okay? And in that, he said, how can you let the very person that is trying to destroy a political party, that one belt meaning Michael Chilufya Sata, to now come and address and say, I will preside over the 10th memorial? And let me quote President Edgar Lungu. He said, he's on record. He said that. Because it doesn't make sense. On one end, you are destroying the very party that Michael Chilufya Sata had built. On the other end, you want how good Michael Chilufya Sata was and how good it is that you want to celebrate his life. And that is why, for me personally, I told the UPND administration to say, you will not dance on Edgar Lungu's corpse. Because on 10th memorial of Michael Chilufya Sata, President Hakainde Hichilema and UPND danced on President Michael Chilufya Sata's corpse. And this is the truth that this country must face. It is the truth that, as difficult as it is, we must face it and say, how do we move forward from here?
Let me ask you a personal question. What religion do you believe in? What is your religion?
I'm a Christian.
You are a Christian.
Yes.
And how much hate do you have for President Hakainde Hichilema? Do you have a personal hate for him? For you to dwell on that, on the other hand, you are a Christian. At the same time, you seem to have a lot of hate for President Hakainde Hichilema. Are you?
It's quite a funny question. You know why I'm laughing, IP? I'm saying it's a funny question because President Hakainde Hichilema, I think a week or 2 weeks ago, said, why do you hate this fellow? You know, every president has done the constitutional amendment, but because it is this fellow, why do you hate this fellow? I don't hate President Hakainde Hichilema. I've got no reason to. I mean, I don't even know the man. So why should I hate him? If President Hakainde Hichilema was not president today, I would have nothing. I wouldn't even talk about him. But it is because he is president of this republic, of which all of us are shareholders. And therefore, because we cannot have 7 presidents at a go, he presides over the affairs of this country. And it is incumbent upon me, as a stakeholder of this country, as a citizen, as a patriotic Zambian, to hold him accountable. How do I hold him accountable? By pointing out the things that he's doing that is not in the best interest of my country. And if the UPND administration sees that as hate, then I'm sorry, I'm not sorry. Because President Hakainde Hichilema was the biggest critic to President Lungu's administration. Was that hate? Should we call that hate? He was providing checks and balances. The same, in fact, he was even worse than me. But I am pointing out the things, and it is his leadership that we don't like. His style of leadership, not him as a person. We've got nothing to do with him as a person. We don't know him as a person. We know him as the President of the Republic of Zambia. And as such, we have to treat him as the President of the Republic of Zambia by holding him account to the office that he holds, because he presides over the resources of this country. For the future generation, we have to hold Hakainde Hichilema accountable and see to it that he does what is good for the best interest of this country.
And that is exactly what he
So
talked about. And that is exactly what he talked about a few days ago, that this country is far much better than we found it, or we took it over from the previous administration. And it went further to encourage people like you and I, among other Zambians out there, that it is time to applaud this government. He gave an example that if I was not serving this government and as a head of state, I was going to be appreciating this government almost every day. Are you one of those that feel that I think, yes, the PF might have messed up in some ways, but I think President Hakainde Hichilema, let me appreciate him. Will you do that?
it will be unwise of me to appreciate Hakainde Hichilema based on the fact that he wants to be appreciated. Like Professor Lumumba said, if you spend 1 hour explaining what you have done, then you've done nothing. Let the work speak for yourselves. So if really President Hakainde Hichilema has worked according to him, he's supposed to let the Zambian people applaud his work and cherish his government. That's all. And I believe President Edgar Lungu did that. That is why President Edgar Lungu, I think he even felt when Ambassador Emmanuel Mwamba asked him on the podcast, he asked him to say, do you at any point feel betrayed by the Zambian people? And his answer was yes. And Ambassador Mwamba said, why do you say so? And he said, because we did so much for this country, and there wasn't a need of me explaining what we were doing, because the works were there to show. So we thought the Zambian people could, bypass the cadarism aspect and look at the things that we did for the country. And indeed, even till today, President Hakainde Hichilema is commissioning projects that were done by Edgar Chagwa. And when we pointed out to say, look, Mr. President, in as much as you are saying you've commissioned this and this and that, it was started by the initiative and by Edgar Chagwa. At no point does he acknowledge the works of his predecessor, but he goes on and pats himself on the back and say, look at what we have done in 3 years and 10 months. Now imagine what Zambia could be in 3 years. But these are the projects that were done by his predecessor. And at no point does he acknowledge to say, my predecessor did this, did that, did this, and we continued. But yet he answered and said, it is the people of Zambia. I think the last time when we talked about the KK International Airport, they spoke, it is China. So the European administration have never acknowledged what President Edgar Lungu said. And even when there is an impasse today, even when they're saying they're trying to negotiate with the family so they can come to amicable conclusion and whatnot, he keeps on saying the previous government that were there before us, they were so corrupt. It is only corruption when it is the previous administration and not the UPND administration. So it's something that this generation and the generation to come need to face. And then we ask to say, how do we move forward from here? I was so surprised that the Attorney General of this country has sued the International Relations Affairs Minister, Foreign Affairs Minister, Lamora of South Africa, as the 9th respondent to the impasse, the court impasse in the SA court. I was really astonished. And I'm saying, what is this government trying to do? On one end, you are saying we want to sort out this issue out of court. On the other end, you're putting in applications and now suing the government of the Republic of South Africa, whose laws are going to apply during this procession. Because what will happen now, the South African government will have to use their attorney general to defend itself and its position. So for the people that said we have moved on, for example, it's really, you question what is the motive behind the Edgar Chagwa Lungu's body. And it's something that as Zambians and concerned Zambians, we must ask. If only President Hakainde Hichilema excused himself, we wouldn't be here today. So what is it that is with Edgar Chagwa Lungu's body?
All right, permit me, Queen Cobra, we pick up a few calls and then from there we continue attending to other few questions that I have for you this evening. You can call me, the number is right on your screens. I have Queen Cobra joining me from UK, of course, discussing the legacy of the former President Edgar Chagwa Lungu, whose body has not been buried up to today, which marks exactly 1 month from the time the man passed on. Of course, Beverly Kundamo is my guest this evening, joining us via the link. Caller, good evening and welcome to the program. All right, please, before you call me, ensure that you take care of your volume by just reducing the volume, or perhaps you can take a walk away from your screens, your volume, to avoid that terrible feedback. You can call me. The number is right on your screens. I have Madam Beverly Kundamo joining us from UK. We are reflecting on the legacy of Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu, whose body has not yet been buried, marking it exactly 1 month. Caller, good evening and welcome to the program.
Good evening. How are you, sir?
I'm well, thanks. And how are you? Tell us your name, please, and where you're calling us from.
This is Chilongo calling from Kapilimposhi.
Mr. Chilongo, go ahead with your contribution. We've got a minute.
Yes, that woman is speaking the truth, total truth. You see, when you speak the truth, people won't like you. Always they hate you. I'm telling you, we are in trouble. Let God of mercy come in and intervene. That station is wonderful. It speaks the truth, the total truth, without favoring anybody. You man, you are blessed. Even that woman is blessed. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chilongo. I appreciate you. All right, you can call me. The number is right on your screens. You can also have your say regarding the legacy of former President Edgar Chagwa Lungu, whose body has clocked exactly 1 month from the time he passed on. There's been some, protracted conversation between the Zambian government and the Lungu family. Caller, good evening and welcome to the program.
Yes. Hello.
Hello, good evening and welcome to the program.
Yes, good evening. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. And how are you? Tell us your name, please, as you have a minute to contribute.
This is Kachweka.
Go ahead with it. Please go ahead.
Yes, the madam, I just wanted to tell her that Kada insulting president in Zambia, it's not like that's when it has started. Let even her know that while me was just insulting the president, Mr. Hakainde, should take note of that. And also many people have been just insulting the president, our former president, and even the present one. So what we want is let our former president be buried in peace as we want as Zambians. That is what we beg from the same madam. She should not complicate the matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you as well. All right, you can call us. The number is right on your screens. I have Madam Beverly Kundamo joining us from UK. Of course, reflecting on the legacy of former President Edgar Chagwa Lungu, and of course the events that have eventually characterized in this matter altogether. Of course, we pick up more calls. These lines, of course, Caller, good evening and welcome to the program.
Good evening, IP.
Good evening. Tell us your name, please, and where you're calling us from.
Okay, my name is Tandiwe Ketisingoma. I'm calling you from Slovenia.
Thank you so much. Go ahead, Madam Ngoma.
Okay, good evening, Queen Cobra. Are you able to get me?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm sure Queen Cobra is able to hear you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I just have a contribution concerning the insistence by President Hakainde Hichilema to attend the funeral of his predecessor. From what we've been told by the family spokesperson, Kanso Makebi Zulu, we've been told that former President Edgar Chagwa Lungu had this, that in an eventuality that he died because of the humiliation, the persecution, and everything he underwent under the hands of the UPND government, he did not want his successor to be anywhere near his remains. My question is, why has President HH insisted that he needs to preside over this funeral? Does it mean if he stayed away, the funeral that he claimed to say to be a dignified funeral, it will stop being dignified? Why the insistence? If President HH had stayed away from the word go, we wouldn't be where we are now. And I ask again, why the insistence? What does he want? Why can't he excuse himself? What is so special about this funeral that he just has to be there? What happens if he does not attend? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Let me pick up more calls. Caller, good evening and welcome to the program. Hello, caller, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Tell us your name, please, and where you're calling us from.
Yes, my name is Maureen. I'm calling from the Copper Belt.
Please go ahead, Maureen.
Yeah. I'm so surprised with these two ladies, especially Queen Cobra and the other one, the other contribution. Yeah.
Yes, please go ahead. As you reduce your volume, there's that disruption from the studio.
Okay. Yeah. If we are calling ourselves a Christian nation and we are busy preaching hate, President Edgar Lungu was a lawyer, and if he didn't want the current president not to come near his remains, why didn't he put it in writing? That's number one. Number two, if President Edgar Lungu, the former president, was alive, was he going to wish this to happen to the people that he so claimed that he loved so much? I feel we are not doing justice to ourselves. We are preaching hate to ourselves. And if you say, HH wale ipalamika ukuisa kuchitumbi chaba Edgar Lungu, President HH is the president of Zambia. How are we going to receive other presidents from other countries to come in our country when our current president Dale Sangwako? You people, I think it's Tontongane Wino. nangu ninevo shimapepo olo ninevo loya abantu baisa pachechi eponzangwa elo naye bati bapaseke balefwayo oyu elo ebena besi baloshechile echitumbi umwine wachililo umwine musumba mwamukanya okwingiramu. I think it's high time that we come together. If anything, it should bring reconciliation between HH and the Lungu family. They can look about the Lungu family if you are Mzango. So those people, they need us.
Maybe let me push in.
Every Zambian.
Yeah, permit me to push in a question before you go.
Yes, sir.
You earlier mentioned that ECL was a lawyer, of which indeed I agree with you. He was a lawyer. And you did mention that if he did not want President Hakainde to attend his burial, why didn't he put that in writing? Now my question is, how have you determined, or have you investigated you yourself to know that there's nothing written?
According to the reports that we've been hearing from the reports of...
So based on hearsays, right?
Yes, based on this. We have never seen that.
Okay, great.
Yes, sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you as well. Allow me to bring in my guest to give a bit of some comments to what has come through. Queen Cobra, you've taken note of the concerns as well as the questions that have come through. What is your immediate reaction?
Right, so I'll start with the other one that accused me of trying to make the situation, is it difficult or I'm being difficult? This is not even about me. One thing you need to understand, in all this discussion and the other lady that has come forward, none of them have taken consideration into what the family wants. And this is where everyone is missing it. So the other one said, I'm making things difficult. And my answer to him is, the only people that are making things difficult is the UPND administration. There's no law that states if a former head of state dies, the only person that must preside or should preside over his impasse or his demise is the current sitting president. There's no law that states that. And one thing Zambians should realize is that there are two kinds of wills that anybody who's died can leave. There's a verbal will and also a written will. So if you're talking of saying, if President Edgar Lungu did not want President Hichilema to be there, where is the will? That is, in some way, for lack of better term, just ignorance. Because where there is a will, there can be a verbal will and a written will. And a verbal will suffices when I, as a person, tell two or more people and say, if this happened to me today, I don't want such a person to be around anywhere near my funeral. That is a will, and it is being communicated verbally. Then she talked of, we need to come together in mourning and reconcile and things like that. I wish this lady could have said the same thing when President Lungu was being stopped to access his medical health. I wish she could have stood up to President Hakainde and Hichilema'S and said, Mr. President, reconcile with your predecessor and let him travel for his medicals. I wish they could have stood up and spoke on behalf of Edgar Lungu, the same way they're speaking on behalf of Hakainde Hichilema. Today, we sit here a month later, and Edgar Lungu is lying the cold. And you talk of, this is the time we need to reconcile.
Right.
Even reconciliation does not happen like that. You cannot have your media, the UPND-aligned media, tormenting the family, saying all sorts of things. The UPND stooges trying to demean this family. The UPND administration have not even accorded the respect that the Lungu family deserve to mourn their beloved. And yet we have people like her talk about reconciliation. How do you reconcile when they are biting you? How do you reconcile when you're being humiliated? How do you reconcile if there's no remorse? How do you reconcile if there's no apology? This whole thing that is happening in our country is all about Hakainde, and that's what I said. It is about Hakainde Hichilema. Even the funeral of Hakainde, of President Edgar Lungu, the UPND want to make it about Hakainde Hichilema. And the question is, when would this stop? Because you have to use some sort of emotional intelligence and say, hang on a minute. Even as I speak about reconciliation, there's a family that is aggrieved. You cannot talk of reconciliation once you take a widow and the children to court the day they're supposed to put their loved one to rest. You cannot talk about reconciliation when a widow clothed in black clothes has to find strength to stand up in front of a judge before she can proceed to a house of mourning or to the memorial service of her husband. You cannot talk about reconciliation like that. Where is your humanity as a people of this republic? So don't just
what
say
should be
things
the way
to
forward, Queen Cobra? What should be the way forward,
for me,
Queen Cobra? Because look, we are talking about 1 month, down the line from the time from the time ECO died, and we seem to be stuck as a nation. What should be done? What solution do you have if you've got one?
so first of all, we need to accept that UPND administration will never give a dignified send-off to Edgar Chagwa Lungu. Never. It will not happen. Even if the body came today, they will make sure they dance on his grave. I'm saying this because he himself, Edgar Lungu, used these words in regard with the 10th memorial of President Michael Chilufya-Sata. And I'm borrowing Edgar Lungu's words. If people are saying, oh, Edgar Lungu should have left a will that what, listen to the podcast during the memorial service of Michael Chilufya-Sata. And this is coming from a person that interacted with Edgar Lungu. And I can tell you that if Edgar Lungu has such things to say on the memorial day of Michael Chilufya-Sata, definitely he did say it, that I don't want President Hichilema on my funeral or to come and preside over my funeral. Now, you asked me what's the way forward.
Yes, please.
For the peace of mind, and for me, I'm taking consideration of the family of Edgar Lungu. None of you matters. None of me, not even me matters. What matters here is his family. And I ask Zambians, let's ask ourselves, if you were in the position of Mama Esther as a widow, if you were in the position of Tasila Lungu Daziso and Chiaso, what would you do if Edgar Lungu was your father? Knowing that even when you bring his body by this administration, he will not get a dignified send-off. For me, the way forward would be that Edgar Lungu be buried in South Africa. And when the time comes for a proper, dignified, without mockery and torment, to be led to Zambia, then that time will come. It won't be the first time that a former president or a president is buried outside his own country. But because of the political situation that we have in our country, and the evidence that this government cannot give Edgar Chagwa Lungu a dignified send-off. Like, for example, IP. It's just 2 days ago that we saw Chabinga, who's harboring the name of Patriotic Front President, being embraced by UPND cadres at Parliament. Are you telling me, is this the government that is going to preside over Edgar Chagwa Lungu? Are they, then President Hichilema can come and say he was PF Patriotic Front President? So we need to accept as a country, and those that truly loved Edgar Chagwa Lungu must support the decision of the Lungu family. And if the decision of the Lungu family says they want to bury Edgar Chagwa Lungu in South Africa, so be it. It is not up to President Hakainde Hichilema. It is not up to you, IP. It is not up to me, but it is up to the family of President Hakainde, President Edgar Chagwa Lungu, sorry. I can even pose the same question. If President Hakainde Hichilema was to die today, what would he want? If he said, take me to Namwala, my village, would he be happy and said, no, you can't go to Namwala, given that he loves Namwala? So we need to accept the truth. And the truth is, the only dignified send-off that is going to happen now is having President Edgar Lungu buried in South Africa. And
when is the right time
when the time
to
comes,
repatriate the remains of ECL? When will be the right time?
So I'm gonna be brutally honest with you, IP, and I think I'm on TV. Maybe a lot of people watching. The right time that I would personally say, knowing I knew who President Lungu was, is when UPND government leaves office. Anyone else who takes over, I'm happy to bring the body for President Lungu and be buried in Zambia. But as long as UPND is in power, I corner man. This is my position, and I'm gonna be honest. And I say it as it is because, trust me, look at social media of what's being said. Look at what the UPND have tried. Just yesterday, IP, the UPND rogue media page called Koswe had a video of a drunk guy who was saying is the son to President Lungu. Does that dignify the send-off of President Lungu? What does that entail? So these are the things that people are failing to point out. Is that humanly to do? What was the point of going to get a drunkard and say this is a son to President Lungu, who is neglected? Is that fair? Is that fair to the grieving family? Is that fair to the other children of President Lungu? And this is just the man who was drunk, and they're fuming. They went as far as to his village to try and persuade some people to say, oh, just bring him, he's our person. So on one end, they're saying, okay, we're going to engage the family. On the other end, they're tormenting their family. What does that make Tarsila feel? That we have somebody claiming to be a son to President Lungu, and President Lungu neglected her. This is the truth that this country must face. And this is the truth that UPND does not want to face. So for me, it is a mockery. And I keep on saying, for us who truly loved Edgar Chagwa Lungu, we must support the family and ensure that UPND government do not dance on Edgar Chagwa Lungu's corpse. And I stand on that. And I will defend that. And I will make sure I speak for Edgar Chagwa Lungu, because I know who this man was. And if he was alive today, he'll be sat there clapping and saying, Banalowi. Thank you, Banalowi. And that's where I stand.
You've mentioned that the remains of ECL can be repatriated back to Zambia when the UPND government, or only when the UPND government is out of power. That's what you said, right?
Yes.
When will be that? When do you think the UPND will be out of power?
Next year in 2026.
You seem to be very certain about it.
I am certain, 100%.
Next
year in 2026, UPND are leaving power. They tend to say 2090, but no.
And the hope that UPND will be out of power next year.
IP, trust me, you cannot gag people, produce cyber bail, and gag people and think people are happy because they can't air their views. President Hakainde Hichilema lost popularity, and he knows he's lost popularity. That's why he's begging to say, if I was if I wasn't president, I would be clapping for this government. He knows he's lost popularity because he wouldn't say, why do you hate this fella? I mean, he got 2.8 million votes. Why should he be worried? A record high in this country. He won by 1 million votes. So why should he be saying, why do you hate me? And this has nothing to do with hate. It has everything to do with leadership. And I can guarantee you, IP, with the UPND, the 5 years or 4 years of UP has been the most difficult time the Zambians have ever faced. They cannot speak because they're scared to be arrested. But deep inside their hearts, they know to say, this is not it. This is not the Zambia. Personally, I never thought I would say this, but supporting Hakainde Hichilema was the biggest mistake that I ever did. And I think I speak for most of the Zambians when I say this. This is the very uncomfortable truth that most Zambians or most UPND don't want to face, but it is the truth. So I'm certain that I think Zambians have learned their lesson and they're ready for change and they want to vote this government out of power. And they will vote UPND out come 2026.
Well, Mrs. Moore, allow me to appreciate you for, of course, sparing your time this evening to speak to me and, of course, and the people of Zambia via the special edition of the bigger program. Thank you so much. We hope to engage you again in the near future.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Beautiful. All right, thank you so much. I've been, of course, hosting Mrs. Beverly Kundamov, who is based in UK. Of course, we've been discussing the legacy of Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu and his body, which has clocked 1 month without being buried. We continue, of course, updating you on a number of issues that may unfold, especially on this matter as it develops. Allow me to appreciate all those that have managed to call in this evening on the bigger program, the special edition of the program. My director behind the camera is William Chongo. Thank you so much. May God bless Zambia. May God bless Mother Africa. Good night.